Hey guys, so we are out here on a beautiful evening. We've walked all up and down this river and we found this log or something sticking out. And if you go back to the camera, you can see we've set up kind of a composition here. Thanks to our filmmaker, Bonnie. Getting that exposure. And we're now using the Lee filter system to darken down the sky with a soft grad neutral density filter, and then we'll put on a ND filter to control the water and smooth it out with longer exposure. That cinematic B-roll of me screwing on these filters here. Oh yeah.
Wow, ASMR.
Yeah, I don't know why it makes this noise. It doesn't actually screw on all the way. Just kind of like have to hope it doesn't like break off. But it looks pretty good there. And the sky is gonna be pretty bright, I think. So we're gonna use a 3-stop soft grad ND here. See, it's like it's kind of what it does to the sky. Darkens it down.
Yeah.
So, and then we're gonna put, I think maybe a 10-stop filter. We can try it out and see. First, let me get my exposure. So you can see by the histogram we're pretty good. We have all our detail in there, but we want to bring the foreground up. But we have, let me bring it down to ISO 100. F11, and then choose our shutter speed to whatever, something like that, and then we'll preserve the detail on our sky. So I'm gonna put these filters in here. 10-stop slots in there in the back to avoid light leak, and then soft edge neutral density filter, just gonna kind of go in here to get the sky. Okay, and now we're gonna put these on the front. The photo pills calculator, and it says since our normal exposure for the scene is a 1/6 of a second, F11 ISO 100, that means we have to use 2 minutes and 51 seconds. F11 ISO 100. So I'm going to go to bulb mode, go into menu, bulb timer, enable, and I'm going to do like 2 minutes and 30 seconds because the light drops at sunset, so you always want to go a little bit more than you think you have to. So there we go, and let me turn on 2-second timer. Oh, it can't focus, of course. I'm gonna focus on here, and then I'm just gonna turn manual focus on and the stabilizer off. So now we're focused on this log here, and I'm gonna turn this here, turn on, touch the shutter, and then still, and there it goes. So we got our exposure. You can see it there. However, the sky looks amazing, but it's too dark. I know we're gonna lose a lot of information here. You see, it's fairly good, but I want to be safe. So what we have to do is increase. I'm just gonna guess here. You can never really know for sure. I'm gonna guess that another minute is gonna do it. Maybe 2 minutes. So now 4:30. Light's looking good. We're gonna take this picture now, and we are off. It's going to take 4 minutes to finish this. We should be good. And another reason why I think it was too dark is because right now we have a 3-stop neutral density filter on the front here, and that's kind of adding to the 10-stop filter that's already there. So we're kind of getting somewhere around 13 stops, a little more, a little less, because it's not all the way on it. So I think that's why it was a little bit too dark. So I increased it. Hopefully the light stays around so that if this one ends up being too dark, we can take another picture to brighten up the foreground, brighten up the lake, because we've obviously preserved our highlights because the sky isn't blown out, but we don't want to have to increase our exposure too much so that there's a lot of noise in the foreground, because this area is so much darker than the actual sky itself. Because it's still appearing too dark, we, even with our longer exposure, because the light's dropping so dramatically, we actually need to we've calculated that we actually kind of need a 1 second exposure to f11, but then I calculated that in photo pills to see the longer exposure time. And that's even with, I put this filter on so we knew what our exposure would be, so that this is not the variable that's determining exposure. This is not adding on to the 10 stop, because we already calculated it within the normal exposure. I'm just going to put this filter on here, and even though photo pills said that it should be a 4-minute exposure, if our basis is a 1 second exposure as a 1 second exposure at f11 ISO 100, the light's dropping so fast that I'm just going to increase it arbitrarily to 7 minutes and a half, just from experience. Like, it's probably going to be somewhere around there, add a couple minutes. So now that we're set, we have ISO 400 f11. We're focused still on that part there. We're going to take a 7 minute and a half exposure. Yeah, I think that'll be good. If the light lasts, the last step I'll probably do is do a focus stack on the far bank, but we're not like that close to this object, and so f11, everything should be acceptably in focus. It might be a little bit soft in the bank over there, but the main subject is really this log here and the sky, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So we're going to wait 7.5 minutes. We have our 3-stop soft edge filter, our 10-stop filter here. We've done a little bit of exposure calculation using photo pills, and we should be good to go. We already have 2 exposures that are really good for the sky. I took a 1 1-second exposure for the foreground, just in case if all else fails, we have an exposure that we're not going to be losing too much detail in areas that are not moving. So, see you in 7.5 minutes. The sky is actually catching fire right now super well. So we're about 3 minutes and 19 seconds into our exposure here, and yeah, it's looking real nice. This is our videographer, Bonnie. I think we should take a shorter exposure for the colors, because we're losing those a little bit. Though these filters have a blue cast, but we really got the exposure right. It's time to change to a 6-stop filter, I think, so you can get a bit of a shorter exposure. So let me switch this out. Probably somewhere under 30 seconds. Okay, 6-stop on here. It's been a while since I've cleaned these filters, so. Okay. After we take this picture, I'm going to check the focus and see if we need to actually focus on those trees over there to get them sharp, or if we're fine with the focus on this log here. I used to use manual focus and zoom in 10 times and use a focusing wheel to try to get it in focus, but I've recently come to just use autofocus and then lock the autofocus, because human error always comes into play a little bit with manually focusing. Okay, so here's our image. I don't think that was necessary, because I like the streaks a lot more.
Yeah.
So
I like the streaks.
yeah,
too.
though we have a foreground and a lake. Maybe that's good. Let me check the focus now. So we're obviously quite sharp here. You know what? I'd say we're sharp all the way through. I don't think we need to focus stack this. I think what I'm going to do is lower the ISO to 100 and go back to bulb mode. I'm just going to guesstimate here a bit of an exposure. I'm going to say if we can get an exposure of like 3.5 minutes, that should be our final picture here. And just see what happens. It could give us some nicer streaks. We'll see how long this light lasts. We got a nice surprise for the light just a little while ago, so we never know what's gonna happen. But I think this is probably gonna be our last shot. So we got a really impressive cloud formation there. I think those are mammotus clouds. I'm not sure, I've never seen them in person before, but I've always kind of wanted to see them. And I'm taking a shorter exposure now. We got our long exposures, they turned out okay. There wasn't the streaking we had before, so I don't think they really reached their full potential, but at least we got them, they were bright enough so that we got the foreground properly exposed. But now, we have these amazing cloud structures, and I just put on that neutral density filter so that I can get the sky exposure down. So that's our regular exposure, and this is the one with the filter on. So you can see we really increased the range we're able to capture in our photo. Okay, so now, if you just take a look at the cloud structure over there, it's really beautiful. And if we want to emphasize that, so I'm just taking pictures. Honestly, this might be better than the streaking sky. It's really quite a sight. And we're just getting them right at the edge of the frame here.
Oh my god, so beautiful.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And we're obviously shooting ideal, ISO 100. I'm just going to decrease this a little bit just to make sure we're preserving the detail in the clouds here. Yeah, this is quite something right now. I'm going to just make sure we have our highlights preserved by just taking an even darker exposure. Wow. It's like a rainbow or something. It's crazy. This is looking really good. I think I'm gonna just I should be safe going until about there. You see our histogram, we're fine. Though the weird thing about cameras is that they actually show a histogram that's the JPEG preview, so they don't actually show the raw histogram, which is something that I don't understand, but okay, I think this is the photo here. We got it. We have all the range in this one. I think this is the one. We have the nice sky. Right now, it's kind of moving too far beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of getting out of frame here.
The reflection is crazy.
Yeah.
How is that?
And we're really sharp.
That's good.
Super sharp all the way through. F11, if you're pretty far away from the subject, you're fine, especially wide angle. One more picture for the foreground. And I'll take one more probably. It's even brighter. Because it's pretty dark here. We're blowing out the sky, but that doesn't really matter that much right now. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's really much left to shoot here. I think we'll just kind of...
Yeah.
I'm just taking a range of exposures just to make sure we have it, because, you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we thought we had peak light, and then it turned out, like...
honestly.
Turned out even better.
It's like, yeah.
I mean, you can see the progression here. That's really our winner shot right there.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy. Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah, I know, right? But, then you can see the light started popping off around here.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's crazy.
And then this one, this is 2193, that's the one we want.
Okay.
And I think we might have enough detail. We might need to use one of the brighter exposures for the foreground. All right, so that's a wrap. It was an awesome shoot. We got to show different techniques like long exposure using soft graduated neutral density filters. You got to use a 10-stop, a 6-stop filter. Awesome conditions. We found this lovely little spot, on this river here. You never think that you could get such a nice composition here, but I mean, we came just after peak fall color, so we came basically just in time, and we got our shot. Now all that's left is editing it. Thanks for coming along. This is the final image, the final edited image, and it doesn't look that much different from straight out of camera. Just some basic edits like lifting the shadows, lowering the highlights, and some basic exposure adjustments, a little bit of color adjustment, but not too much. I'm going to show you the raw file now. So on the right here, this is the raw file straight out of camera, but I have to explain what this file on the left here is. This is the file with a white balance that's corrected, a daylight white balance. On the right, this is the white balance that I actually chose in camera, and this is a white balance typically used for indoor shooting scenarios, when you're inside with regular indoor lights. I chose this white balance because it gave the image a nice blue tone, and it brought out some of the natural characteristics that my camera couldn't quite capture. So, for example, on the left here, you can see my camera captured a gray sky and kind of desaturated orange tones that don't look particularly appealing to me. And on location, I really saw more of a blue-gray sky and a little bit more of a vibrancy in those sunset colors. And so by changing the white balance, I felt it accentuated the scene more. And although the colors aren't exactly 100% true to life, due to the limitations of cameras, you can never really exactly capture the colors that you see, or at least in challenging situations like this where there's a lot of range between the really bright sunset and the pretty dark foreground. That's when it's difficult for the camera to capture the full tonal range of colors. And so by adding this blue filter in camera, and also I had a Lee Soft Grad 3-stop neutral density filter, basically a half dark piece of glass to bring down the really bright sky. And so by applying that filter on the outside of the camera, it also has a blue cast to it. The filter by nature, just how it's built, the glass or the resin that it's made of has a blue tone. So these two factors really affected my experience of the scene. And looking at the scene through my camera, I saw more of these blue tones in these magenta pinks in the sky, and that's really what made the experience special for me. And that's why I chose to accentuate that both in camera and then keep that accentuation in the final edit. And so if we go over to our edit here, this is the Photoshop document, and you can see I've deselected all these layers, and I'll go through them and explain what each of them does. But I did some standard edits to this photograph here from the raw image. So you see this is the raw on the right, and I chose to take some artistic representation of these colors, both because I saw this scene as an interplay between what my camera captured and what I saw through my eyes. And what I saw through my eyes was a little bit more of a blue-gray. I was there from 5:30 to 6:30, so 45 minutes before sunset and about 15 minutes after. So I saw everything from golden hour to sunset to that blue hour where the sky started turning a nicer shade of blue than a kind of a flat gray, which my camera captured a flat gray, but in reality it was always more of a blue-gray. The only thing I believe significantly has changed is the highlights in the sky, which were more of a red-orange, and I've turned them more magenta because I feel it adds a nicer color contrast to the scene and really imbues the scene with an awe. And I call it Sunset Rainbow because this, maybe I can show it better on the edited version, this arc here offers very nice, interesting, contrasting colors, and it has sort of a rainbowish shape, a half rainbow. And it happens that the white balance in my camera, you can see, kind of already changed it to a color like this. That's a mix of a little bit of a hint of orange and more magenta, and I just pushed it towards a bit more magenta here, versus the flat orange here, which doesn't really work together with the rest of the colors in the scene. So going back to my Photoshop file here, what I've done is just a basic distraction removal. So you see the lights here, I just took those out because they didn't add to the scene and were just little dots of distracting light. Then here I just did a little bit of color work, so I made the blues a little more teal, less magenta, um, and again took a little bit of the harshness out of the colors in the sky. And then here I've just increased the greens a little bit, and if I open these layers just briefly, you can see I've just done overall adjustments here to the whole image, and then with these adjustments I've just made some masks where I took specific parts of the image and paid more attention to their color. I did a little bit of dodging and burning, basically just brightening some areas and darkening some areas of the image to give more of a tonal contrast and a brightness contrast that I saw when I was there. It wasn't just a flat light. Sunset was a dramatic light, dynamic. The sun rays were peeking through all these little gaps in the clouds you see, creating these pockets of light. And then I added a little bit of sharpening, and you can see it's just bringing things up a little bit. And then I applied what's called an Orton effect. It basically just softens out some of the parts of the image, like the river and the sky. Just gives a little bit of a glow. A nice effect that tones things down so everything doesn't look digitally sharp and it looks more natural. And here I've just increased the brightness of the trees and increased their color a little bit. I chose to increase their color this way because the way it's represented on the left here is too warm. These colors were more of a red, more of a pinkish red, not this kind of off orange red here. So again, that's another upside to playing with white balance a little bit, because you can change the colors but do it in more but do it also in camera, so you can see on location what it's doing, and you can compare it to the actual sky and take an artistic blend of the two experiences to put it into the photograph that hopefully will transmit your actual experience as a combination of the two rather than one or the other. So then I've just done some work on this log here, just some basic stuff. I didn't want it to be too bright, but I wanted to keep it as the focus of the foreground. And then as a final step, I did some dodging and burning, again, just to recreate those patches of light. The light was reflecting off these leaves, so I just brightened the leaves up a little bit and the trees up a little bit. And there we go, that's the image. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That was zooming out, zooming in, and you can see we have a lot of detail here, very sharp. Just going to go through the image to give you an idea of all the detail here. You've seen the sky is perfectly controlled. There's nothing that's too white, too blown out. It's all under control. You see we don't really have much noise in this image. It's very clean. It was shot at ISO 100 at a sixth of a second at f11, and you can see it's a really beautiful sky. And that's the edit. Just fairly simple. I did most of the color work, honestly, on location by choosing that white balance and putting that filter in front of my camera to give everything a blue cast. That, to me, was more representative of my experience.